Hi, welcome to the Black Pill. Let's talk about Savages, Christina Bergling's book. And the question is, why won't the zombie obsession die? I love the book though. This is a courageous book on a number of levels. Bergling's treatment of the main protagonist, the last woman on Earth, Parker, cracks open tropes. At the beginning of the story, she and her partner, Marcus, lay exhausted in a field of dismembered corpses, a whole town of savages, bestial ex humans that may or may not be zombies. The protagonists pick themselves up and raid the town for supplies, finding more than they expected, both a survivalist's hoard of food and a living infant. Rather than being a slave to her womb, I mean, this is a trope in so many novels where there's a female protagonist, her main motivation is a baby in one way or another. You know, she's lost one, she's trying to, whatever. Rather than being a slave in this case to her womb, Parker's reaction to the infant is far from motherly. She's a skillfully painted three-dimensional portrait. Marcus is the one to insist on trying to save the child. The concern is that there's no guarantee that that child will grow up human. That the child might be just another of these zombies or pseudo zombies. There might be nothing they can do about it. So Marcus insists on saving the child, and we get some wonderful character growth from both characters over this child, this plot point. This is a horror story, and horrible things happen. Bergling seems to have read the formula guidebook Save the Cat and thrown it out. Don't expect any pulled punches. Horror, like comedy, is about going too far, and she does so quite skillfully. At the same time, she mixes scenes of disgust and terror with beautiful, elegant prose. Not purple by any measure, the writing is nevertheless somewhat poetic and definitely moody. This writing adds expertly to the atmosphere. Additionally, the work takes on existential themes as I think horror can, and only horror really can. Bergling poses to the readers a number of important questions. The biggest ones: what does it mean to be human? And how can we live with the sure knowledge of death? Both remain unanswered, as perhaps they should. But she does hazard some guesses about smaller questions, like how are we to love when existence is so impermanent? And what is the value of painful emotions and experiences? This isn't a huge novel. You could read it in one sitting if you're a fast reader. I mean, it took me a day, but I read about as fast as the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, you know? I think, though, that it will stick. It'll stick with you. Now, I've been waiting for some time, at the time I wrote this thing, to get into the topic of zombies. And why does the genre persist so strongly? Other fads come and go. Vampires were big for a while, then werewolves and ghost stories, but the zombie phenomenon, like zombies themselves, is relentless. It just goes on and on and on. Savages may or may not be a zombie story. You decide. Bergling explicitly notes that it hardly matters whether her savages are undead or merely have shed the last of their moral restraint. The effect is identical. I think that is at the heart of the persistence of this genre. Old people have always hated young people. Like half the Socratic dialogues were Socrates, man, bitching about how young people have lost their moral compass. In the 20s, we thought flappers would destroy America with their bobbed haircuts and beaded purses, you know. The so-called greatest generation, which is what happens when you let a generation name itself. They thought baby boomers were useless layabouts with dubious moral character. Uh, Baby boomers did destroy society. Anyway, but no one else did. Free love hippies and eco terrorists, the lot of them. Um, here, here, and we like nothing better in this modern age than. I mean, this is a few years ago when I wrote this. We liked nothing better a few years ago than to hate on millennials, the largest block of voters, parents, and workers. My generation, Gen X, seems to have faded to invisibility in the generation wars, skipped over like Prince Charles, and maybe that's for the best. Oh God, it's King Charles now. I remember when I was writing this that we were all hoping that there would never be a King Charles, We didn't manage to completely skip that. And anyway, in an increasingly frustrating political landscape, it's easy to paint both baby boomers and millennials as having lost their way and being brainwashed by political advertising and social media. It's easy to cast social media itself as sucking the life out of everyone and turning them into mindless machine servitors. Tastes and manners change. Young people don't show respect in the same way that their elders do. Elders tend to have ritualized forms of respect, calling people by their gendered marriage status, last names, honorifics, sir and ma'am. We treat people the way we were trained to treat them. Younger people just don't know the rules. They know what underlies the rules. Respect has deeper connotations than special language. We call people by the names they ask us to use, disregarding often honorifics and gendered marriage status. We're more likely to treat people the way they want to be treated. From both sides of this equation, we see shambling, even monstrous subhumans all banding together, threatening to overwhelm democracy based on inadequate moral reasoning. We've been brainwashed into social justice, according to the right, or we've been brainwashed into accepting capitalism, according to the left. I mean, the left is really right. But we've all been brainwashed. During the 2016 elections, there was a spate of clown sightings. Do you remember? Do you remember the clown sightings? Sinister clowns by the roadside and dancing around fires in the woods and on people's, when doorbell cams were new, they're on your security cams, just standing there. Do you remember? Menacing clowns. I don't think that is an accident. We clearly had insincere political candidates vying for our attention. And we had so much hypocrisy from potential voters as they rationalized their largely right-wing choices. Clowns are fundamentally human beings made up to be unrecognizable, with insincere smiles on their faces. Hence the atavism. That's why clowns are troubling. I don't think the undying zombie craze is a coincidence either. The shuffling, rotting corpses, disgusting and relentless, symbolize so much about American society at almost every time in history that I think the craze is likely to continue into an indefinite future. George A. Romero famously described zombies as innocents. Being mindless, they have no choice about feeding. It's just what they do. His stories and all good horror aren't about rambling, mindless monsters. They're about us and how we react. In the face of threats, do we accept authoritarian leadership? Do we degrade into mindless murderers ourselves? Or do we manage to retain some spark of humanity somehow, against all the odds? But Bergling's savages, she hints, are not innocent at all. At least one of them has a gleam in his eye and a voice to lie with. No spoilers, of course. I'll just leave you to sort all that out for yourselves.